Hey everyone! Before we open today's file, please make sure to follow us on Instagram at d.s.radio, where you can find all the images that go along with today's case. You can drop us an email at contact.dsradio@gmail.com. You can find all of our socials in the Linktree bio on our Instagram profile, including links to merch. If you're feeling especially generous, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio, where you can get access to our exclusive Instagram page and make suggestions for upcoming episode topics that you would like us to cover. Speaking of Patreon, thanks to our Patreons, Riff Cult, Cropley Crab, Cash Broadus, Raspberry Jr., Jason R. Nelson, Creepy Paper, Jamie Sook, Michael Laughlin, Lindsay Keller, Mike Wright, Greer Weaver, Kelsey Carruthers, Linz Gibbon, Drake Holvig, Only Child, Michael M, Wesley Akers, Riaz K, Emily Medeiros, Pip, Heather Wynn, Graves, Devon Sweatshirt, The Ordained Sinister Minister, and Philip Hoffman.
Hi everybody and welcome to Dystopian Simulation Radio. My name is Chris. I am the first of your two hosts.
And I'm Linz. I'm the second. Weird way to go about it, Chris, but here we are.
I know. I always get put on the spot at this. I'm like, yeah, I'll do the intro. I have no idea what to say. How's it going?
Yeah. Okay. Going through some little medical things, but I'm fine. Just a couple of symptoms here and there that would be better if they weren't there, and they are slowly dissipating. So let's just say I'm good, but it's freezing and it's -15 and it's also very cold. But I'm positive, remaining positive, Chris. How are you?
Well, you know what they said. Symptoms never killed anybody. Yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm just recovering from the Christmas chaos and from the loss at the Christmas special edition where I lost my crown.
Ah, the quiz where I kicked your ass and you lied and cheated. Yes.
I lied and cheated.
I admitted.
ChatGPT.
I admitted to that, and I was always going to, but everyone who listened to the episode, and I've received messages about this, said that you definitely said oingo boingo. So put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Well, if I did, it was misspoken, because if you're going to put oingo boingo in there, I'm going to think about it.
All my wrong answers were also misspoken, so we can all say we misspoke, Chris, and we're all winners, but the truth is, you cheated and you still lost. And you have to sleep at night knowing that.
This time next year.
Yeah, it's everything to play for, because we each have one win under our belts, and we're going to have an actual wrestling belt, not an actual one, a plastic one. But it's a wrestling belt nonetheless that we're going to fight for, and we're going to customize it.
Well, we must thank Septembrio once again. Thank you very much, not only for the wonderful music that features on our podcast, but for hosting the DSR second edition quiz at Christmas time. So thank you once again, Septembrio. We'll see you this time next year, and probably sometime in between, knowing us.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely see you somewhere in between. But yes, go listen to Michael's music, follow his Instagram. It's just at Septembrio.
Now, Linz, let's talk for a moment before we dive into today's case about the Patreon. Were there any interesting updates over the last day or so?
The the Patreon, yeah. Well,
Hmm.
we usually find we don't have a lot of time to do extra episodes, but we've begun doing extra episodes, and we started with something quite special. Um, I'm not sure if it was enjoyed, but it was definitely listened to and appreciated in its own way. Okay, it was Dolphin Erotica. We did the OnlyFins episode, everyone. We did it. We're not releasing it on the main because my mom listens to this and she's not hearing that ever in her life. It's basically a Patreon exclusive episode of Chris reading Dolphin Erotica, and it's as horrific as it sounds and
You
weirdly
asked for it.
sexy.
Yeah, you asked for it, guys. I am available for hire should you want me to read any books that you have written on audio
Any
tape.
fan fictions
But
of you with celebrities?
please don't make it Dolphin Erotica. Not Anna Kournikova again.
But yes, if you want to see our After Dark episodes, just follow the Patreon. We have, if you had the Patreon app too, there's a chat where all the members can chat. And recently the chat has been things like, oh God, why? Oh, finally. And enjoyed the episode but couldn't make eye contact with anyone. So it's fun.
You heard it here, folks. Sign up right now.
Sign up, and there'll definitely be more of that coming. I'm going to try and do at least 2 little extra audio things per month. That's the aim right now. It's not our full-time gig, DSR, so we do have to find a lot of extra time for it, but hell yeah, it's definitely happening over there right now. And yeah.
You've all been so good in supporting us for the last year with the Patreon. So now we want to start really adding some stuff to
Yeah.
it. So this is our next sort of step on things. So bear with us. It isn't our full time job, but I feel anyway that I owe it to you for supporting us. So to add a few more bits here and there for you. If you do want to join the Patreon, you can head over to patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio and you can sign up there. We have 2 options. One is just early supporter, which is just £1 or roughly $1. Or you can go I was trying to make a dolphin joke, not whole hog, the full bottlenose.
The full rostrum.
Full rostrum. And you can dive in at the £5 level, which I believe is around $7. And with that, you get all of the extra exclusive content and everything else that goes along with it. So it is worth going for the higher tier one because you will get all of the extra things on that one. The early supporter £1 one is really just going to become, if you want to give us just a little bit of a thank you moving forward. But you will still get the 3 text posts and so on with that.
Yep.
So don't forget as well, if you are a Patreon, you can sign up to our exclusive Instagram account at DSR Friend Club over on Instagram. That is private. We do have to let you into it, but anybody and everybody can join our regular old Instagram at d.s.radio, which is free and will have all of the images from today's episode.
Hell yeah.
So let's move on to today. So Linz.
Yes.
You live in the Swedish wilderness.
Yes.
Have you ever seen anything unusual out there in the woods?
Do you know what, Chris? This is really bizarre. I haven't until last night.
Oh.
And I haven't told you this yet, but last night I was trying to sleep. Very dark, very cold. I think you've seen the view from outside my window. It's just forest. And I was laying in bed, no one around, no need for anyone to be around. And I hear, it's the snow on the ground, by the way. And I hear what sounds like someone has picked up some snow, packed it into a snowball as hard as they possibly could, and absolutely lamped it at the window. So it was like, thunk. And I was like, what the hell is that? So I got up, looked out the window, nothing there. Lay back down in bed, a little bit scared, but okay, maybe it's just a house expanding, contracting, it's cold, the heating's on. Happens again, happens again, happens again, different parts of the house. Really freaked out now. Look through the blinds with the lights off, really concentrate. And I see what looks like either a man in a large winter coat, the silhouette of a man in a large winter coat, or a freaking Bigfoot. I'm just gonna say it. It looked like a Bigfoot. It did. It did, Chris. And
Right.
I was in absolute fear. And apparently, according to Michael Septembrio, and Chris, you would know this too. We did an episode on it, but when Bigfoot is in the vicinity, he likes to knock on things, knock on trees, knock on walls, knock on windows. And
Heaven's door.
I was I was terrified. So yeah, that happened. Did wake up in the morning, look out the window again, and see that was a large shrub, though. So
I was going to say, might this be in any way connected to the symptoms you're experiencing?
Possibly. Don't, just to not be vague, I discontinued a medication, everyone, and I'm having some weird ass symptoms, but it's completely normal. They will go away. And yeah, everything feels very strange right now, and that didn't help. It didn't help that Sasquatch. At first, I was like, Chris, and then I was like, Chris isn't visiting me.
The fucks.
But legitimately, that did happen. But thankfully, I hope it was a large shrub. Couldn't tell you.
Well, that's definitely a bit unusual, but not really what I'm getting at today. Have you ever seen, any space people who lack chins? No?
Sorry. Space people who lack chins. You mean aliens?
I mean, some people might call them that if they don't have chins.
So sort of like, I'm imagining a man with a balloon-shaped head with a suit wearing it. No, Chris, I haven't seen any. I've seen chinless men.
I mean,
all you got to do is grow a
reason.
beard for that, though.
Not asking for any reason particularly, just, checking. Well,
okay.
let's talk about this interesting case that's come across my desk. The bizarre tale of Carl Higdon and his encounter with the being known as Ausso-one.
Oh.
Yes, Linz, let's start 2024 off on a high with a good old alien encounter.
Yes. I've been missing them, Chris. I have been missing them.
Well, as with all good stories, this one starts at the beginning. Carl Higdon lived in Rawlins, Wyoming, a town with a population of a little under 11,500 people at the time. Carl was a 41-year-old father of four and a former Air Force veteran of the Korean War. He was now a foreman on an oil rig and had earned the nickname the Wyoming Coyote due to his ability to get the job done. Side note, and genuine question for our American listeners, is it coyote or coyote? I know the hockey team is the Arizona Coyotes, but I've heard coyote before. Anyway, answers in the Instagram comments, please.
I feel like you should say coyote in like a southern accent.
Is it coyote or coyote?
In that accent, I think it's coyote.
Either way, get off my property. Well, the Wyoming Coyote, Carl Higdon, world heavyweight champion, decided one fateful day on October 25th, 1974, that he was going to take the day off work and go elk hunting after receiving word that a key staff member needed for the day's work had called in sick. Deciding that he wasn't going to get anything really achieved without the person who actually needed to do the job that day, Carl thought about his family. He had a family with 6 mouths to feed, and he was feeling the pinch, which is why he decided the best use of his time would be to go and bag an elk. These elk did not live on oil fields, surprisingly. So he had to drive 40 miles into the wild using the company truck, by the way, before continuing on foot for the final stretch. Circa 4 p.m., he peered over a ridge and spotted several elk. He set the sights of his 7mm Magnum rifle on the buck. He hovered his finger over the trigger and... Wait, what? Why was he in his truck?
What?
Who was pulling him out? Was that trip been a dream? No. He'd gone, but he's got no memory of the hunt or returning the truck. He peered at his watch, and it was now 11:30 p.m.
Missing time.
Who and what was going on? Linz, let's pause. What do you make of this so far? You mentioned missing time, but what's happened?
Okay. It's an alien case. He went to shoot an elk, and they were like, no, abduction time, baby. And then suddenly he experiences missing time and he wakes up elsewhere. Isn't it classic? This is classic, right?
Are you suggesting he was abducted by elk?
By aliens!
Oh! I thought you meant that the elk were like, no, sir.
Not in this area, bitch. They were some hardcore elk. No, I feel like, well, you told me it was a classic alien abduction story, so I'm assuming he went to shoot the elk. The Greys were like, nope, but thanks for coming all the way out here and falling for this delicious bait. We knew you were starving. We knew you'd come out here. And then they were just like, yoink, big butterfly net, take him up to the spaceship, poke around, send him back down. I don't know.
Well,
Occam's razor.
You're not millions miles away from things. But let's dive a little bit deeper into this. Immediately, Carl was taken to a local medical facility where nurse Ella Peterson examined him. Carl was clearly not quite right. His eyes were red and watering, like he'd just watched Marley and Me on DVD. That film had not yet been made, and indeed DVDs had not yet been invented, so we can rule that theory out.
The eldritch horror.
Carl was disorientated and discombobulated, having trouble walking and initially not recognizing his wife Marjorie. As she spoke to Carl, his memory began to return, and he remembered that his rifle had maybe misfired. He remembered pulling the trigger but feeling no kickback at all, and the bullet had seemed to fall to the ground in slow motion. Marjorie put this down to the confusion that Carl was experiencing, but as she went through his pockets, she found the bullet he was talking about. It had been placed inside of his water canteen. It was intact, but turned inside out, as if the bullet had struck an impossibly hard object. We'll talk more about this.
This isn't one of your erotica episodes, is it, Chris?
Ballistic experts cannot explain what happened to the bullet. Now, at this point, we need to introduce one Leo Sprinkle. Linz, question time. Was Leo Sprinkle A UFO researcher and parapsychologist? B, the rich head of the Sprinkle family who made their fortune on ice cream toppings? C, the governor of Carbon County? Or D, all of the above?
I feel like a Mr. Sprinkles did not make ice cream sprinkles. I don't think they call them that worldwide. Isn't that a British thing?
So we call them hundreds and thousands.
Oh, God, yes, we do. I'm going to go with he's just the governor, although I want him to be all of them so badly.
Well, I have to break it to you that he was simply a UFO researcher by day and a parapsychologist by night at the University of Wyoming, I am afraid.
Still exciting, but I did want it to be some governor action.
Well, Leo Sprinkle had worked with several others in regards to UFOs, including the tale of Pat McGuire, who had experienced UFO activity when his farm was plagued with unidentified flying object sightings and cattle abductions several years earlier, a stone's throw away from Carl's location in Wyoming. Let's have a quick sidebar about Pat McGuire. McGuire began to remember more and more of his encounters with the aliens through Sprinkle's regression sessions. He and his son met the alien beings several times, They were human-like in appearance, with thin lips, no bridge to the nose, hairless, and were large-eyed. They all wore black and were broad at the shoulders, thin at the waist.
Stop it!
They wore belt buckles with the Star of David on them, and these star people were, well, very Jewish to Pat.
Wait, what?
Apart from the Star of David belt buckles, they also instructed him to have 13 children, one for each of the tribes of Israel. Pat's wife Wanda tapped out at number 8, so he promptly divorced her and married lovely Lynn in an effort to pump out 5 more.
What? He took this seriously?
Mm-hmm. Pat claimed that he was transported into the mind of Ariel Sharon, the Prime Minister of Israel, during the Six-Day War of 1967. The Star People, as Pat called them, promised to divert an underground river from Canada to his farm, if and only if he flew the Israeli flag above it.
Right.
Guess what?
He did?
He did, and after being told by experts that the farm was arid and he would never tap a source of water on the farm, after having several companies come in to excavate for water, after convincing one last contractor to give it a go, a vision came to Pat. He stacked 3 rocks on the ground and said, "Drill, boy!" And they found nothing. "Drill some more, boy. What am I paying you for?"
Was he Foghorn Leghorn?
I see. And they drilled down to 275 feet, the deepest that had been dug on the ranch, but still no water. "Keep going, boy. Drill more. There's water in this here farm, I tells you." And at 350 feet, they struck something. The ground began to creak, and several knocks were heard on the equipment. Suddenly, water began gushing from the hole. They had struck a deep and reliable source of water with which could be used to irrigate the farm. The Star People had kept their part of the bargain and redirected that Canadian underground river.
What? I don't know if it's true, but this is amazing.
Pat later ran to become governor of Wyoming in 1982, running on a platform of extraterrestrial outreach. And shockingly, he lost.
You can't win them all.
He died destitute after having lost the farm and his sanity in 2009.
I think I would also lose my sanity if that actually worked and I was like, oh my God, water. And then maybe he started listening to, maybe that was a coincidence and then he just started following all the requests and they were all duds.
Anyways, back to our ice cream mogul, Leo Sprinkle and Carl Higdon. Sprinkle began regression sessions with Carl, which is a great name for an album, by the way. And what was revealed shocked him. The regressions revealed that once the trigger was pulled, Carl was transported to what he believed was another dimension. The bullet exited the rifle, but there was no kickback from a powerful weapon. The bullet made no noise as it was fired and moved as if through jello. That's jelly for us, Linz.
Yes.
It moved in slow motion for around 50 feet before gently landing on the ground. Carl became aware of the silence. Absent was the sound of wind rustling, birds chirping, insects conferring, or even the grazing of the elk that he had just spotted. A tingling feeling rose up from his legs, as if the air was alive with static electricity, as in just before a thunderstorm. The silence was broken when, just like a movie, the snapping of a twig underfoot rang through the air like, well, the bullet that didn't. Carl spun around and was confronted with a being. Linz, will you please describe this being?
Oh, yes, I thought you'd never ask. um, this seems to be in Japanese.
It is in Japanese.
Yeah, okay, so... Sorry, there's a lot going on here. Right, this being has, to me, a regular guy's face. I don't know if he looks like a Japanese dude because a Japanese person has created this drawing and we tend to draw ourselves, but he's got kind of, I think he's got a bit of a Spock eyebrow going on, which is lovely. I don't know if he has a head of spiky Dragon Ball-esque hair and two little antennas coming out of it. He looks like he's smelling something a bit rancid. Then he's got what I can only describe as a black jumpsuit made out of what looks like thick rubber, and the arms of the suit look like the tube on an old school Hoover, like Henry Hoover.
Yeah.
There's not a hand in one of them, and in the other one there is a big spike where there should be a hand. Then he has two, I think they're blue tubes, both rubbery or plasticky looking, across his chest in an X shape. He has a belt, quite a wide belt with the Star of David, and something above his groin. I could not tell you what that is. It looks like a bum bag, or should we say a fanny pack. And then he's got very small and dainty feet and sort of regular man legs, although they're a bit short. They're kind of longer at the thigh and shorter at the calf. He's got little diddy feet there. Very strange little guy. Kind of love him. Would date. 5 out of 10.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to show you his, when we swipe right on him in a moment, I'm going to show you his second profile picture, which might change things a little bit. But first, let's explore the description given by Carl.
Oh, okay.
So this part's a direct quote. He was definitely man-like in height. I'd estimate he stood well over 6 feet and weighed about 180 pounds. This was definitely no ghost. Good Lord, he was flesh and blood. Amen.
Chris, this deserves an accent.
Oh, sorry. He was definitely man-like in height. I'd estimate he stood well over 6 feet and weighed around 180 pounds. Yours was definitely no ghost. Good Lord, he was flesh and blood. Amen. Is that good enough? Or bad enough for you?
That was beautiful. I love that. That was beautiful. Made him a bit hotter as well. Like that man was so impressed with him. Now I'm feeling like he's definitely he's moved up to 8 status in my alien rating system.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to any Wyomingers out there. I do not know your accent well enough to mock it accurately, but I'll learn.
That was definitely not it, but it's the only one that we can do.
Wyoming's not even in the South.
No. I think it's quite a neutral accent, isn't it? But anyways, you get what you get, you know? We can't be good at everything. Chris can only be, he can be good looking and tall, maybe not so great at all the American accents.
Carl later described the exact features of the entity. The clothes it wore were largely black, similar in appearance to a scuba diver, with its clothes clinging to the skin. The harnesses crisscrossed the being's chest, and a 6-pointed star featured prominently on the being's belt, validating Pat McGuire's everywhere. Under the star, there was a distinct emblem. The being was difficult to look at, as it was certainly male, but its face seemed to join directly into its neck. There was no chin, just like me.
Wait a minute. On the drawing, I didn't realise that part. I just thought his chin was like the high neck of his suit. I thought it was just covering up his chin like a loose turtleneck. But You're
Well,
right.
yes.
There's no chin. Yeah, you're right. That is strange. That is strange.
The entity's eyes were small and lacked eyebrows. The mouth had thin lips, and behind them sat only 6 visible, massive teeth.
Oh, they
It,
didn't draw that on the picture.
Hmm. It had an afro of coarse, thick hair, thicker than any human, described as straw-like. 2 antennae protruded from its skull. On the right arm, there seemed to be a drill-like appendage, and on the left, there was nothing. Nothing at all, where one would assume the hand should be.
Yeah.
Carl also described the colour of the being's skin as golden yellow and, this is a direct quote, similar to an Oriental's. For fuck's sake. Just say the Men in Black and now this. Will you stop, guys?
Yeah. Okay. I'm just gonna say okay. I let these descriptions slip. It was the 70s. They said things that you don't say now. We'll skip over that. But
no.
Okay.
So, Linz, I'd like you to look at this second profile picture that I had promised you here.
Okay.
That shows a few more of the what's and all description of Ausso.
Ah, right. Yeah, I was going to say that the description you gave did not match the cool Japanese alien that I just looked at. This... You couldn't be more far away style-wise. So this will be on the Instagram, d.s.radio. Anyone can join and we will have these pictures up so you can see them. But this one, now that's something. So we have what I can only describe as a toe-like head. So, a thumb-like head. If you lift your thumb up and have a look, it's sort of like that going into a shirt neck. The skin is literally yellow. Not Simpsons yellow, a little bit lighter. Giant teeth, like the Who's of Whoville teeth going on there. The antennae are coming out of the forehead through a sort of wound-looking opening that's kind of embossed around the antenna. I don't like that. Creeps me out. Very weird expression on this man. He's got kind of the hair from... What's he called? Is it Harry? One of the sticky bandits in Home Alone 2 where he gets electrocuted and he turns into a skeleton. He's got that exact hair. And yeah, he just looks like he's sort of constipated. It's not as cool as the Japanese one. It's very scary and I would not like to see that. Sorry. No, you look how you look. You're born that's how you're born. I don't know if he was made. It looks like something I crafted in ceramics. I don't know what that is, Chris, and I wish I hadn't seen it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. He's quite the catch. Ladies, he's out there if you want to find him. Well, the creature addressed Carl in perfect English and said, "How are you doing?"
What? Just casually?
Yeah.
So it was just a dude?
No.
No.
But
okay.
He did speak very good colloquial English. And Carl responded, not really knowing what was going on. Pretty good. And the alien replied back to him, "Your sun burns us. You're hungry? Take one of these pills. It'll last 4 days, and you've got 4. The pills levitated over to Carl, and he diligently swallowed one, with seemingly little control over his actions, and pocketed the rest. The creature introduced itself as Ausso-one and invited Carl to take a ride on his ship, which was a cube that seemed to be covered in some sort of predator-like cloaking device.
Isn't this just how men make friends?
Yeah, this is how we do it. This is definitely how we do it. You hungry?
And
You want to ride in my car?
Do you want these pills?
Yeah.
Also, you said the pills levitated over. Was it an open the mouth and go chomp situation, or did he have to like pluck it from the air?
I'm not sure, but I think it wasn't into his mouth. I do believe they went over to his hand, and then he felt the urge to take one, as if not.
Oh gosh,
not in his
mind control. Mm-hmm.
The cube ship was small, seemingly too small for Ausso-one himself, or Ausso-one. I heard it pronounced in different ways. I'm going to call him Ausso-one because it makes me think he's Australian.
Yeah, I love that.
Instantly, Carl found himself, Ausso-one, and the other two similar alien creatures, and the 5 elk that he'd just been hunting, all transported instantly inside the craft.
No, the elk.
The elk. They
Oh,
were
this
coming
is
along
amazing.
for the ride.
They just don't care what you are. They're like, man, elk, it's just weird shit on this planet. Get them all in here.
They were behind some sort of force field and seemed to be very, very docile, as if they had been drugged in some way or mind controlled in some way. Carl hypothesized later on that all of them must have been shrunk somehow to fit inside the box shape, but he admitted that the pill had numbed his senses to the point where he wanted to cry at the bizarre nature of it all, but he just couldn't.
Aww.
One of the beings led him to a chair and placed a helmet on his head with various protruding objects on the outside. In a literal second, the ship jumped into action, and they told him they were making the jump 163,000 light miles from Earth to Ausso-one's home planet.
Okay.
The craft landed upon a town resembling the Seattle Space Needle, a familiar sight to Frasier fans, being at what Carl presumed was at night, as the lights around the tower were all blinking. These lights were more powerful than any spotlight here on Earth. They began to hurt more and more, and Carl shielded his eyes, yelling, "Shut them off! They're burning me!" At which point, one of the aliens jumped in with its own sick burn and said, "Your sun burns us too."
These were just like stoners coming to pick up a human. Is this like fishing for aliens?
Well, later, Ausso-one would explain that they live under a different sun, and our sun, our earthly sun, burns them, which is why they wear their black suits, and they largely stay in the shade when on Earth. But they do have more freedom on cloudy days.
Chris?
Yes.
Am I an alien?
I have asked this question privately many, many times. I'm glad you'd like to address this publicly now. Linz, the floor is yours.
I think I might be. I did do Ancestry, and it didn't say anything about unknown DNA. But maybe I come from a long line of masked alien DNA. Who knows? Maybe this whole podcast is just my like ancestry journey unfolding.
Carl met several other Earthlings while he was there on this planet, a middle-aged man, a young girl, and 3 teenage girls and boys. They were all conversing in a friendly manner between themselves in normal Earth clothing. Had they been abducted too? Why were they here? Ausso-one retrieved Carl after a brief rest, and they chatted as they proceeded through the tower. Ausso-one told Carl of a planet which was inhospitable for life, with differing suns and seas that made it hard for life to exist. This was why they had retrieved the elk, to bring for farming and breeding. Ausso was a hunter, and that was his job, and he led the expeditions to Earth.
I knew it.
Carl was taken into an examination room where he was made to stand in front of a shield-like device. This shield appeared from the wall and was about 8 foot tall by 4 foot wide. It examined Carl for around 5 minutes before disappearing flush into the wall again. Ausso-one ushered him out of the room, and they began to descend the tower. At this point, Ausso-one broke the news to his new best buddy that he would not be staying and would be returned to Earth, as Carl was sadly not what they were looking for. Although,
Oh, that's such a knock to the self-esteem.
even worse, he would just leave Carl with questions for the rest of his life as he didn't elaborate more on what exactly it was they were looking for.
Oh, he was like, what's wrong with me? Why not?
Instead, Ausso-one quickly shifted the conversation and wanted to talk turkey about food. Their planet needed food badly, and they did not care for the canned variety in supermarkets on Earth. They needed animals, and Ausso-one especially wanted meat. Birds, animals, fish, they needed to populate the planet, but the environment was largely inhospitable. Not enough oxygen in the oceans to sustain fish populations. They just died. The duo returned to the craft, but now it was empty of crew and elk. Ausso-one began the process of taking the cube craft in order to take Carl back to Earth. At this point, Ausso-one expressed wistfully that he would like to exchange mementos with Carl, and he was especially interested in Carl's gun, but sadly, this was forbidden.
Oh, I wonder why.
Carl thought for a moment that Ausso-one had forgotten about those remaining pills in his pocket, which would serve as evidence for the whole ordeal back on Earth. However, Ausso-one pointed his drill bit hand at Carl, and the pills levitated out of his pocket and returned to the being who had given him them originally. It struck Carl that actually he'd never been close to Ausso-one or any of the other aliens that he had encountered, always being around 5 or 6 feet away at any point. They must have been early adopters of COVID measures.
Or Swedish.
In fact, Carl believed that they were somehow surrounded with force fields, and he realized he never actually saw them from behind or inside profile, only ever face on.
They knew their angles, okay? Some people...
Well, I mean, you got to know your angles if you're Ausso-one. You want that first profile picture, not the second one.
Yeah, you don't want to show that side profile.
Suddenly, the cube was back on Earth, hovering above Carl's pickup truck. Ausso-one pointed his drill hand again, and the pickup dematerialized, and then instantly rematerialized around 5 miles away in the wilderness, over terrain that would have been damn near impossible to drive a truck over successfully. Ausso-one made some more gestures with his hand, and suddenly the gun appeared in Carl's arms, and the bullet back in his pocket. Ausso-one looked at Carl and in a friendly tone said, "We'll be seeing you," before Carl gently floated down to the ground at a leisurely pace.
What? We'll be seeing you? Is that just like a polite way of saying goodbye? Was he like literally, we will be seeing you?
I'm not sure. It sounds, the fact that Carl described it in a friendly and warm tone, almost like saying goodbye to a friend, but it is slightly threatening as a statement.
Yes, that's unnerving.
We'll be seeing you. Imagine if you just signed off conversations with that.
I'll be seeing you. Yeah, imagine. And like, especially after someone's taken you up to the planet and gone, oh, you're not what we're looking for. But then you know that they're harvesting meat. And he says, we'll be seeing you on our plates very soon. What the hell?
Well, upon landing, there was no sign of the alien or his ship. Carl scrambled over some rocks and then promptly fell down a shallow gully 8 or 9 feet to the ground. And you can't teach someone how to fall off a 9-foot gully. He was now as disorientated as a figure in a snow globe. After wandering for some distance, Carl came across a truck, not realizing it was actually his, and crawled inside. There was a 2-way radio under the seat, and he managed to eventually guide rescue towards him. Upon finding Carl, the rescue team was shocked as the car was slap bang in the middle of a sinkhole in a remote location, absolutely impossible to drive a car or pickup truck to.
What?
They had to haul it out using specialized hand-based towing equipment before transferring him to a local medical facility. And this is where we rejoin Carl from the start of our story, with nurses and his wife attending to him as he slowly regained himself. Carl's wife, Marjorie, surprisingly, had no trouble believing her husband.
Jesus. She's like, oh, sure, honey.
She knew him never to lie, and as she ventured out into the woods to offer what help she could to the rescue team, she too witnessed odd glowing green lights in the sky. When Carl was rescued, he did not recognize her. And the first thing that popped into her mind was to ask him a normal question, and the first thing that she could think of was, "Oh, honey, have you caught any elk?" And this set him off, and he began to look like a deer in the headlights, or an elk in some headlights. He looked shocked, okay? He also didn't want anyone to touch him, and he became very agitated when anyone, even his wife, tried. The journey back into town was only broken up by a brief stop at a gas station to refill. But Carl escaped the vehicle and ran to the other side of the road, screaming on his knees, those lights, put those lights out, help me God, help me get those lights out." Carl was submitted to a barrage of tests, but all came back negative. He kept on repeatedly asking for the 4-day pills from the nurses.
Oh, God.
Roughly a day later, he regained back much of his composure, but his confidence was completely shot. Only a mighty fine cup of coffee, black as midnight on a moonless night, could give him some courage. We've all been there, pal. Carl returned home, but he was not himself, only leaving the house for the briefest of strolls and refusing to drive the family car. Dr. Sprinkle caught wind of the case by a small article in a local paper and began the regression sessions. And this is where all of the previous information came from. At this point in the story, Carl remembers little of this before the regressions shed light on the situation. Now let's wrap up some loose threads here before we continue. So, firstly, in the years that followed the regression, Carl was treated for some conditions here and there, but he had no lasting effects. He actually got better. He had previously been treated for tuberculosis and kidney stones, but all traces of these had vanished, much to doctors' surprise.
Okay. I like this. Finally, some positives.
Back pain did bother him from time to time, and he often complained that he felt like he'd been pulled apart and put back together again. The bullet that Carl had, the inside-out one, was examined by Dr. Walter Walker and the Carbon County Ballistics Department, and they confirmed that yes, it was Carl's bullet and had been shot from his rifle, but they could not explain how any human could fashion the bullet into such a way by hand with a hammer or any other object, and they couldn't explain what would do this naturally. It was as if the bullet was compressed by unnatural forces or objects. The doctor likened it to a superhero pulling apart the bullet.
What? Was there any other explanations of this, like online when you were
I haven't
poking
really,
around the internet?
come across any from any sources. The most widely going theory, if you believe this, is that the bullet somehow struck the craft, and that's what turned this into this sort of bizarre mash of metal. I did try to find a picture of the bullet, but unfortunately there doesn't seem to be any out there. So whilst this seems to be a key piece of evidence, as well as without any actual evidence of the evidence, we have to take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt. But if anyone does come across it, or if I happen to find it and when I'm putting up the pictures for today's episode, I will of course include it on the Instagram.
I hope we do get to see it because that would be something.
Now, Carl believed that Ausso-one relayed that he was not suitable because actually 9 years earlier he had had a vasectomy. Carl,
Oh, are they going to breed him?
yeah, Carl came to think that they were looking for men who could procreate. Possibly they would have paired him up with one of the females or more, but he could only speculate on this, the randy bastard.
Can't they reverse it? I mean, they're aliens.
I mean, probably. I mean, if we can reverse it, they can reverse it.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's just coming up with excuses. He's like, it's probably that, guys. It wasn't anything else about me. It must have been that.
Carl never encountered Ausso-one again or his band of cheerful space boys. But green lights did follow him home sometimes, and he always wondered if this was what was meant by "we'll see you again."
Ooh.
The press did eventually sensationalize things, but at the time it wasn't a huge story, and Carl never sought out fame. The only hint of this was that his wife wrote a book about the ordeal in 2017, 43 years after the fact, so this was hardly a quick cash grab. Carl returned to the oil fields eventually and then retired in 1997. He passed away in 2022 as a result of complications brought on by COVID in his home state of Texas.
Aww.
And I'll give the last words of this case over to Carl himself.
It don't make a hill of beans to me whether anybody believes it or not. I know what happened to me. If people want to take it at face value, that's fine. If they don't, it don't make me any difference. The only thing I'm saying is if this does happen to anybody else, what they are to do is talk to somebody about it. Not to hold it inside and try to conquer it themselves because it can't be done, I don't think. I don't think our mind can take it. As far as the experience happening to me, I think if it hadn't been for Dr. Sprinkle, I probably would have been in an institution by now.
Aww. I love him.
Well,
I hope he went to a different planet after he passed.
I hope he's found happiness with Ausso-one in another dimension.
Me too. Oh.
Well, Linz, what are your thoughts on this admittedly quite bizarre tale? We've covered alien abductions before. We've covered people being taken onto spaceships, but there's some very odd parts in this. What are your thoughts?
Well, one thing that kind of sticks in my mind is that sinkhole thing. I was just thinking, like, what is a sinkhole? Do they produce any kind of like noxious gases or anything that could make you trip balls and see chinless wonders flying down from the skies? Like, what is a sinkhole? Why is I don't get it. But yeah, that's the first thing I thought. And then I was like, I just love that these like dudes came down, just like hunting hunters on Earth.
Like
Transport, like, I just love it. I just think it's a great story because I always thought of alien abductions as like aliens fishing and just going, there's one, whoop, and like beaming them up. But like, I don't know, there's just something so funny about this. And I love the difference between like the illustrations. Like the Japanese one looked so cool. I was like, oh yeah, that's such an awesome character, a great design. And then the one that actually fit the description more was just horrific and silly. I just love everything about it. As for like the legitimacy of did it happen or not, you know I like to be skeptical, but I always think there's something weirdly like some weird psychological thing happening to people when this happens. But I absolutely love the story. It would have been better with like, you know, a picture of the bullet. Like that would have been good. I don't know if it's out there. It could be. Sometimes these things are hard to turn up, but we'll have a look. But that would be good. And then maybe like, I don't know. I guess it was the 70s, so they're not going to do anything forensically about a man's crazy alien story. But it would have been nice if we had those things these days just to have a look at and sort of analyze a bit. And if something like that happens these days, people really look into it, I think. And I don't think a bullet that was turned inside out would just simply go under the radar of anyone looking into this stuff today.
No.
So
I mean,
if
I'm
his wife's
sure
out there,
his family still have it, I would imagine.
yeah, if his wife or his family have that, like, oh God, please, like, mail it to us. But I love the story, seriously. It's been a while since we've had a good alien encounter story. I always love them. They're always it's making me think fondly of the early DSR episodes. Like, remember the full-on broccoli boy from the Yorkshire mountain cliffs or whatever, the Yorkshire moors or wherever it
Little
was.
more alien. Yeah.
Yes. Oh God, I love that. That was such a funny early episode, and we used to record in person back then too. So just looking at each other's expressions while we recorded them was like half the fun.
Yeah, when we in that episode we reenacted a regression session where you were my doctor and I was
Yes.
I was the abductee.
Oh, it was so good. Go back and listen to that, guys, if you haven't. It's one of the earlier ones, so the quality might be a bit different. And I do believe it was quite an echoey room that day, but it's still a classic.
If you
Like,
are
oh, it's
listening
so
on
good.
Spotify, you can type in DSR Aliens and you will find all of our Aliens podcasts in one place on that. So this one will be added to that playlist as well.
There you go. Oh, I love this episode though, Chris. Thank you so much for sharing it with us and telling us this amazing tale. It's kind of like a bedtime story for me because it's quite late here and this is probably the last thing I'm going to do before I head to bed. So this has been a great bedtime story.
Well, don't peer out of the window and see any chinless wanders throwing snowballs at your windows.
Oh, God, I probably will. Things aren't going that well.
Well, thank you very much for listening to today's episode. What are your thoughts on it? Write in. You have various ways to do it. If you're part of the Patreon, then you know how you can do it. You can leave comments. You can join in the chat. I'm also going to be posting a short documentary about this on the Patreon so you can see some of the evidence for yourself. If you are just a listener, then that's no problem at all. We love you. Thank you for your support by just listening. Why don't you leave a comment on our Instagram page and then you can feedback. What do you think? Is this real? Did Carl really meet an alien called Ausso-one and was taken for 163,000 million light miles away from Earth? Or is it complete rubbish? And was he, having some sort of TLE incident going on in his mind? Let us know. What are your thoughts? I'm inclined to say it's likely rubbish. It's likely.
I love the way you thought so hard about that. This might be made up.
Well, the thing is, the thing that sticks in my mind about it is that there's a little bit of precedence from it. Farmer Pat met some aliens that had a lot of Jewish symbolism. And although that didn't really come up here, the one thing was that there was a 6-pointed star on their belts. And Carl specifically mentions that. So could it be the case that Pat just went off the deep end and interpreted that as a Star of David and all of these other, crackers things that he went on to do was just him, but he did really encounter those aliens. I mean, it seems a bit of a bizarre coincidence, but then again, who knows? There's definitely something funny going on out there in Wyoming, though. So if you live in that state or anywhere nearby, let us know. Have you ever seen any aliens? Have you seen green lights in the sky? And most importantly, do you know anybody who lacks a chin? Because they might just be an alien.
And on that bombshell, thank you for listening, everybody. And we appreciate you. Thanks so much. And we hope 2024 is going to be a really good one for DSR. Share it to everyone and interact on our Instagram. Drop us a message. Tell us your stories. We love to hear them. And yeah, thanks so much, Chris, for presenting today's episode.
You're very welcome. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time with one of your episodes, Linz, that I cannot wait to hear. But if you want that little bit more of DSR, remember, you can join our Patreon, patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio, where we are starting to drop some exclusive content. And I promise that it won't all be dolphin erotica, unless that's what you want. And then I promise it will be all dolphin erotica.
Splish splash. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Carl Higdon lived in Rawlins, Wyoming. It's a town with a population of a little under 11,500 people at the time. Carl was a 40. This is going well, isn't it?
Breathe, Chris. Just breathe and read slowly.